For the past week or so, I've seen quite a few folks posting II Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14, and a lot of preachers preaching on it, and that has me excited. That has me excited because I truly believe that is God's formula for revival. In fact, for quite a few years, I've been preaching in revivals and in Bible conferences, and even wrote a book on it, Reclaiming the Land, God's Formula for Revival. Friends, I truly do believe that that is God's formula for revival. But if we're going to truly understand what II Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14 is all about, we're going to have to understand several things about it. And so instead of my regular Bible study this week, I'm going to spend time this week, all week long, going through the understanding and the background of II Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14, to where we can truly have a better understanding of it and apply it to our own personal lives, apply it to our churches, and apply it to our nation, and know that God is going to do a phenomenal work through that. Well, the first thing that we need to understand is the context of II Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14. And in the context of II Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14, we understand the background of that is the dedication of the temple. The temple has now been built. God had told Moses way back in the book of Exodus to build for them a tabernacle, a tent that was a temporary place, and they took it with them wherever they went. But now God had directed them to build for them a permanent structure. David wanted to build it. David said no. God said, no, you have blood on your hands. You're not the man. And so God raised up Solomon, the son of David, to do that very thing, to build God a permanent structure, a temple. And so when Solomon built for them a temple, all of Israel came together. They all came together. They was there for about a month, and they had solemn assemblies, and they had a time of worship, and they had a time of dedication. And we see in II Chronicles chapter 6 the prayer of dedication that Solomon had lifted up to God. Now, if we truly want to understand 2 Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14, we need to study the prayer of Solomon in 2 Chronicles chapter 6, because here it is that God showed up to Solomon in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 12 and called out Solomon by name and said, I heard your prayer, then gave to him 2 Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14, and basically saying, Solomon, I heard your prayer. This is everything that you said that you and this nation wanted to be. Now I'm giving to you 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14, holding your feet to the fire, saying this better be who you said you wanted to be. And so as we look at that, that is the context of this. And God moved phenomenally as they dedicated the temple to the Lord, and they had that ceremony. They had great sacrifices that was set there, and the fire of God fell down. The Shekinah glory of God fell down upon them and consumed the fire to the extent where the priests weren't even able to go in there and do what God called them to do. Now, friends, that is revival. Jonathan Edwards once said, when the first Great Awakenings broke out, he said this, he said, God has done in a week what an army of zealots could not have done in a whole year. And friends, that's what we need. We need a moving of God. No one else can do it except for God. Now, what we also understand in the context of that, we don't have a physical temple, but we have a spiritual temple. The Bible tells us, first of all, we worship, Jesus said it, we worship God in spirit and in truth. So today we're living in New Testament times and New Covenant times, so we worship God in spirit and in truth, not in the physical ways that they did in the Old Testament. So where is the temple of the Holy Spirit today? Where's the temple of God today? Our bodies. And so what do? We dedicate ourselves wholly unto the Lord and say, here we are, God, we're dedicating ourselves. I am dedicating myself wholly unto you, and we're seeking the fire of God to fill us and consume us. And guess what? If we're serious, if we're genuine, just like Solomon was, just like the nation of Israel was, God will fill us with his holy fire, and revival will come.